Hi, everybody. My name is May. Thank you so much for joining me today. We've had quite a lineup of speakers, and it's really an honor to not only present with them, but to carry on some of the ideas and thoughts. And, for me, my intention is to hopefully provide some information that you guys can apply. So, for those of you who haven't met me, my name again is May. I'm a yoga therapist. And one of the things I've really enjoyed about my particular work is personally being able to benefit from what I'm offering in so many ways. And this particular topic is so special to me because I think one of the first times I started working with people with sensitive immune systems or nervous systems, I was very intrigued, and honestly, I wasn't really sure why I was so drawn to it until the talk about mindfulness and awareness, right? It wasn't until I started recognizing my own sensitivities. And the thing is, I've always known this for quite some time. So through the presentation, I might share a little bit of my own story, but and then maybe some case studies, some samples of what happens with other either clients I've worked with, or just this general population, and hopefully we can again draw some connections. And as we connect the dots, I'm hoping this will give you some again applicable tools you can apply to your life. And the one thing I want to say about the immune system and the nervous system, I'm sure a lot of you guys are either, if you're healthcare professionals already, you're well versed in it. If not, just as the reminder that our nervous system does control so much, or has a huge effect on so much of our other systems of the body, and of course, including our immune system. And what's interesting is, there's a lot of ways to measure various things that are related to our health, right? Medical conditions. We can measure our blood, and for example, like inflammatory markers to see what our immune system is doing. But what I want to present today is a little bit more qualitative, and kind of step away a little bit from the scientific part, because we're actually going to have a great Q&A session panel at the end where Marisa will be sharing quite a bit of the science behind it. So again, I want to provide more information that you can apply personally. So with that said, let's go to the slides and we'll talk about the objectives today. And by the way, for Q&A, if you have any questions, if you want to jot it down or anything like that, I'm going to try to save 10 minutes towards the end of the practice to answer that. And I really do invite it, because I find a lot more people are affected by this than either they realize. And I'm sure, again, if this is for you or for someone even if it seems like it's a personal application, I find it actually really does apply to a broad sense of the population or the demographics. So I really encourage that at the end. And if for whatever reason we run out of time, you can try it again at the panel, during the panel, or you can contact me directly as well. So with the next slide, I'll share just briefly what our objectives are for today. I'd like for you to understand that there's these common symptoms and factors that affect those with, again, sensitive immune and nervous systems. But what I want to share today is more from the yogic and Ayurvedic perspective. So again, a little bit less from maybe the current modern model, medical model, but from a more traditional perspective. Okay. And then the second part is mindful lifestyle practices. And that's kind of the theme along, this integrative wellness, right? Is that how can we not just look at the parts of us, but the fullness of us? So our lifestyle practices are quite valuable in considering, especially again for this population. And then more importantly, also, how can we utilize these practices to balance either your or our own personal nervous system? Because the beauty is that we are taking everyone into consideration, right? Our own unique circumstances, our own unique needs and tendencies, which we'll talk about quite a bit, like our personality and tendencies. So I would love for you to kind of open up your thoughts to how can I again apply this, and instead of looking at what are the steps 1, 2, and 3 that I can do, so I'm probably not going to go in that direction too much, although there's a lot of information out there, maybe on the web or whatnot, or do X, Y, and Z. But I really want you to hopefully open up and see how this affects you personally. Okay. So with the next slide, I'd like to talk about Ayurveda for a moment. If you're familiar with it, fantastic. For those who aren't, I'll touch on it a little bit. And the beauty of a lot of our traditional practices is that, again, thousands of years ago, there weren't microscopes and all these advanced technologies that we have, right? And even to some degree, the scientific method that has helped us create amazing advances, like with medicine. So traditionally, if you look at Ayurveda, which is translated as the science of life, Ayurveda, science of life, and it's a sister practice to yoga. So ideally, if you're practicing yoga, Ayurveda, you kind of want to use them intrinsically together, integrate them together. And what's really great, again, is that we're looking at characteristics of nature. So to briefly touch on it, there's essentially 3 doshas or constitutions that we all inhibit. And it's not one or the other, usually it's a combination of the 3. And there might be like a dominant one and maybe a secondary one is typical, but sometimes there are all 3 characteristics within us. So for example, I like to start with pitta because pitta is sometimes I find a little easier to grasp. This idea of fire, right? So this element of fire, and I'm not talking about specifically fire itself, but what does it represent, or what are the characteristics of it? So obviously heat, right? Heat and fire and passion. And so if we look at our physical body, the pitta, fire, if we are, again, it's not good or bad. It's like, are we in balance or out of balance? And if we're in balance, if we have pitta energy within us, we will have drive and we're very motivated to get things done. That's in our, personality, in our physical body, we just have a lot of energy. If we're out of balance with pitta in our physical body, it can be lead to things like inflammation, right? So flame within our system. So the nice thing about Ayurveda is, even though it's quite complex, it's actually very intuitive as well. So if you're ever feeling overheated, for example, well, what do? You cool yourself down, right? Like maybe you drink cooler waters or liquids. But there's also food that you can take and practices you can take on to help calm the fire within you. And kapha or kapha is the earth energy, which I won't talk about too much because it's not as relevant to this topic. The way it is actually relevant is you want to apply more kapha energy into your life. But if you can recognize then vata energy. So vata is the energy of air quality, which is in essence movement, right? And it's really important here because we're talking about our energy system. And essentially that's what our nervous system is. So in Chinese medicine, we call it qi. In yoga and Ayurveda, we call it prana. So we're very interested in understanding what is the energy we carry within our system. And if the air quality is one that is very light, right, and it moves a lot, we want to notice, is our air quality, are we in balance as far as vata or not? And what we usually find is that if there's too much movement or chaos in our mind, like if we're thinking a lot and we have monkey minds, right? Elise was talking about it earlier during the food presentation. If there's a lot of movement in our physical body, in our environment, if there's a lot going on, like what's happening in the world these days, it's an abundance. It's like too much excessive air quality. And what that does is it brings us further into a vata imbalance. And some of those symptoms will include things like anxiety and digestive disturbances, sleep disturbances, being susceptible to colds and infections, chronic pain, which is also a combination of also pitta imbalance, other chronic diseases like heart disease, respiratory disorders, cancer. I like to talk about even autoimmune for a moment because I'm finding that especially those who are afflicted with this condition, it is quite complex and sometimes it's, well, probably most of the time is very frustrating. So if you guys know anybody or if you yourself are, working with something like this, I understand how frustrating it is. So to kind of put these pieces together and try to navigate through all that can be challenging. And that's why mindfulness is so powerful. the most important thing I find that further this too is this disconnection and frustration we feel with ourself and our body. So, when there's a large imbalance of vata and then also some pitta, because usually I find people are dealing with multiple scenarios. They're not just dealing with anxiety, but along that way, they're having trouble sleep, which is when we're supposed to be healing, right? And then now we've caught a cold. And if you have a sensitive immune system, now you're really worried about catching something that can further, you down, chronic pain. So it's just this snowballing effect. And so ideally, we are looking to recognize if there is an imbalance in that vata energy, again, within ourself, our environment, and then maybe we can use that recognition to mitigate the symptoms that we're feeling inside. And I just want to reiterate that we're not looking at vata as good or vata as good or bad, but it's just it just is, right? Like air isn't a bad thing, fire isn't a bad thing, right? None of this is necessarily bad. So I want to reiterate that it's a matter of, can we keep it in balance? Okay. Thank you. So with the next slide, just want to see if this resonates with you. If you are a mother, or maybe you're not a mother, but someone in a similar position where your kids like, mom, I need you. I need your help. Can you help me? And you're just bombarded, and especially with, you're working from home. If that's your scenario right now, your kids are homeschooling, or actually I have a friend who's homeschooling her kids now, but if they're having to do distance learning from home, your home environment is greatly affected, right? So, the joke is, what made you finally decide to take yoga? And mom's saying, I need to put the om back in mom. So if you find yourself in this predicament, I think you're in good company. So hopefully we can again address that. So for this next screen, I'd like for you to close your eyes for a moment, again, because I would love for this to be applicable to you. I'd like for you to close your eyes, and we're going to talk about something that might be hopefully interesting, as I call out these various personality and tendencies. If you are taking this workshop for yourself because you have a sensitive system, or for a loved one that see if this resonates with you, see if this applies to you in any way, okay? For these beings or yourself, is there a tendency to be very creative, where you have many ideas and there's just an abundance of them, and there's just all these lists of things you want to do in your life? Yeah. Maybe you feel ungrounded or all over the place sometimes, head in the clouds, so people might describe in such a way. Again, irregular sleep and eating patterns, you kind of just go with the flow, and sometimes you up really late, especially if there's a lot going on. Maybe you skip meals. Are you sensitive to people and environment? Like you can feel people's energy as they enter the room, or if the environment shifts, if it rains, you feel different than if it's sunny. Is there a hypervigilance, a sense of hypervigilance? Again, especially during this time of COVID, where, we're being told to 6 feet distance and wash your hands all the time. Does it feel overwhelming? Was there already a tendency of that even prior to COVID, or maybe when you were growing up and it's kind of been a part of your personality or your character? Is there a tendency to overthink and worry about things? Do you tend to analyze things to death and look at all the scenarios, to choose the best one? You tend to take on too much, right? So much on your plate, and it's hard for you to say no to people or things or ideas or projects because you want to do it all. You're a perfectionist, where you're hard on yourself and you just keep thinking things could be better, or you could do things better. So, give it a moment for that to sink in. If you feel like some or a lot of those qualities are part of you, or again, the people that you are having in mind that you're caring for, recognize that it's, it might seem like a fresh day, but these personality types and tendencies, because they are vata personalities and pittas as well, they can greatly affect our health. So while being creative obviously isn't, again, a bad thing, it's like if we have too many ideas and it's hard for us to get grounded, then it can pose as a challenge, right? So a lot of these might seem negative, but again, I know there's a lot of positive that comes from this personality trait, but we want to be aware of that. So what I'm, approaching you with is, if we pay attention to our personality, well, we can certainly change our diet. We can certainly go to the doctor and take certain vitamins, whatever is recommended to us. But I like looking at this kind of this side of the equation because it's not common that healthcare professionals might discuss this part. So I'm going to kind of pose that idea to you. Okay. So let's look at the next slide with the stress curve, because if you do fall within that tendency, this is a quick reminder that not all stress is bad, right? There are certainly good stress that we can experience, like you have a new job, right? And you're taking on new responsibilities. You're moving to a new phase in your life, whether it's having children or getting married, moving to a new home. So these are all different stresses that are very possibly positive for us. But just as a reminder that, of course, we know the negative potential, quote unquote, negative stress that causes chronic stress. Be mindful of the positive stress too, because there's a tendency in our culture to say, oh, these are all great things. And the more we can handle them and juggle them, the better beings we are. And, so again, it's a reminder to consider the quote unquote good stress as well. Okay. Because we can certainly lead to that breakdown and burnout and anxiety state. Okay. And let's look at the next slide. So if the understanding is that our vata energy, if it's out of balance and it controls our energetic body, then let's look at some things we can look as far as lifestyle and just general ways of being that can hopefully help us. And now I know a lot of this stuff that's on here. I mean, each line item could be an hour, 2 hour, a day long, week long talk on its own, right? And especially applying the practice can be even more difficult. Okay. But I'm aware of that. And, I spend a lot of time working with people with this over weeks and months. And so, but I do still want to throw it out there so I can plant that seed. Okay. So setting boundaries and saying no more often. I have that as number one, because for us Vata people, and I'll, include myself in it, we like to multitask. We like to do a lot of different things at once, but it creates more of that ungrounded feeling. So we have to be very mindful as to what we say yes to. Set a routine. What do I do when I wake up in the morning, in the afternoon? When do I exercise? When do I work? When do I take time, dedicate time to eat? When I started my business, I wouldn't eat lunch till 4. And, I can preach all this and I know how hard it is to practice, right? So dedicating time for play and rest as well. But again, it's a very conscious choice. Taking things one step at a time. So again, careful of not to multitask. And I do find that, there's a tendency for women to maybe be affected more by, this sensitive immune system and nervous system. I don't think it's necessarily that it affects more women than men. I think men just sometimes aren't as, aware of it, or they're not as sensitive to feeling it. But I do know that, autoimmune conditions is kind of on the rise, especially for women. I believe it's like the third cause of third chronic disease that's up there for women. And so if you can take things one step at a time, in yoga, we call it vinyasa krama. It's like taking one step at a time. You acclimate a little bit and then you add on. Okay. Taking long exhalations often. It's been spoken about quite a bit about parasympathetic nervous system, which is what our exhalations help us to stimulate. And there's different types of breath work now. It's so popular. If you're not in the yoga world, and if you ever jump into it, it is extremely powerful. There's different ways to do breathing exercises. And then there's this kind of new, almost trendy breath work style that I can elaborate on. It's pretty powerful. A little bit scary sometimes, is very stimulating as well. But there's different practices like that you can consider. I highly recommend energy work. I know, I do some body work, and cranial sacral therapy is one of the ones I've been using a lot especially for my clients with sensitive nervous systems. It's very light to no touch, and you'd be surprised at how powerful it is. Again, it's a really a beautiful practice if you ever want to look into it. Sound therapy, which, there's discussion about mantra meditation, using various bowls. Literally, they're vibrations that you can feel moving through your body, and it helps to harmonize the energy system. Again, the quality within our body. Acupuncture, of course, from Chinese medicine is very directly related to our energy system. A lot more, but these are some you can, that are more readily available. And then with grounding practices, and I know it seems like a cop-out, but please, you can consider Googling Vata balancing or Pitta balancing if you have inflammation and pain inside your body as well, or digestive challenges. There are so many, and again, it's just too many to list. But again, you can look at the food practices that, again, nutrition could be part of it, right? Not just exercise as far as practices. So there's quite a few, and there's a plethora of information online. Very important is notice when there's chaotic energy. Again, I'm talking about first, if we recognize what's happening, then we can do something to shift it. And I find that a lot of times that gets skipped. So we just go right into what can we do, but you don't know what you can do until you know what's happening, right? So notice your breathing pattern, notice your heart rate, notice the pace of your mind, your environment, what's happening around you, whether it's outside your home or inside of your home. And then, of course, relationships, I find a lot of times our well-being, fortunately or unfortunately, is greatly dictated by our relationships, not just our immediate loved ones, but whether it's our friends or colleagues. So, there's always different things we can do to, I don't want to say control it, but to be mindful and make choices around that we don't always, sometimes it's easier for us to say like, well, I can't quit my job, or I can't move out because my environment is challenged, or, this person's in my life, that's my mom, I can't get rid of her, right? But there are creative things, mindful things that you can do to, again, set those boundaries and what you say yes to and what you say no to. So, and then again, pay attention and connect the dots. So this is really important because a lot of the work I do, I'm backtracking with my clients, right? Okay, they feel this pain today or this symptom today. Well, what happened yesterday? What happened this week? And usually you'll find, oh, I had this incident at work. Something happened. I accidentally took a fall. Something happened when I was driving. So there's usually a lot of causes and effect. And it's a matter of like, do we pay attention? Do we notice it? Okay. So I wanted to plant those seeds in your head. We're going to do an experiential practice. And I'd like for you to just observe during this time, what things feel like for you, what your energy is like. And again, just take these mental notes. We'll call that part of our mindfulness practice. Okay, so when you're ready, you don't need a mat or anything. You can do it virtually anywhere. And you can be seated if you prefer, but for this first part, or you can just stand up. So I'll stand up and hopefully you guys will be able to hear me okay without. And we're going to start by doing very simple little things. So I usually like to start my practice by just mobilizing my joints. So we'll just do this to warm up, wrists, your breathing, you're in a circle, maybe your arms, elbows. And as you do this, you can feel, and I also, if you don't need to see me because you can hear me, just close your eyes and do this, right? Circle at your shoulders, right, left, maybe both. See how you're feeling today. I don't know if you've done any practices or any exercise yet today, so see how you feel right now. And then we're going to move down. You can go into your hips. Sometimes I just put my hands on my hips. I call these butt circles. I have pretty much all of my clients do this, no matter the age. My favorite is when I have male clients in their 70s and 80s who have never done yoga before. And this is my favorite to do with them. So just going to move. What did my hips and back feel like today? Okay, and then you can pick up one of your heels, circle your heel, circle your knee, go in both directions. And then the opposite side. And if you want to kind of take your arms behind you, you can just interlace your hands, lift your heart. You can maybe drop your chin and gently roll your head right and left. And just see what your neck is doing today, how it feels. And again, remember the energy you're carrying as you do this and how you're doing what you're doing. All right, so this next thing that we'll do is, you can stay standing, is what I will call either dancer's pose or It's a posture that is not necessarily easy. And if you do have any, if you're very sensitive to pain and you know that, I would either skip out of this one or be extra careful, okay? But this next posture, I'll do it. I'm gonna stand up and demo it, and then I'm not gonna do it, and then I'll have you guys do it, okay? So I really wish I could see you guys, but we're gonna do the best we can. So basically, you're gonna be standing, and I'll turn to the side so you can see what's happening. You're gonna stand with your 2 feet. If balance is challenging for you, by all means, do this by a wall, okay, or a counter. But if you feel pretty confident and you can balance pretty well on one leg, then you're just gonna pick up one of your legs, doesn't matter which one. You can reach your other arm up if you have that balance, and you're gonna kick back and reach forward. Okay, so this is going to be the posture. And again, I know it's not necessarily an easy one. Again, please be mindful if you know that you have some physical limitations. But if you do not, then I'm going to have you do that, and we're going to hold that for about a minute. Okay, so whenever you're ready, we'll start right now. So you're going to get into the posture. Do just one of the sides. And in this minute's time, of course, there's a good chance you will fall out. And if you fall out, just do it again. So same side. And there's a good chance you might fall out 1 time or 10 times or 20 times. If you are in a quite stable way, you can maybe push a little further. You can see if, wow, if I kick a little harder, what would that look like? You're a little over 30 seconds. In fact, you've got about 20 seconds left. What do you do in this last 20 seconds? Just see what that looks and feels like. Get your last 10 seconds. If you feel really stable, maybe you kick harder and you go a little bit more. And again, we didn't do a lot of warm up. So again, I know this is a challenging one. Last one, okay, and then release that. Once you come down, you can kind of just roll your body a little bit down, just rounding your spine a little bit to release your lower back if there was any tension there. And close your eyes as you stand tall for a moment. Take a few breaths. Notice how you feel right now. Notice your breath, your heart rate. Notice how you feel about what you just did in that last minute. Notice how you feel about what you just did in that last minute and what your thought patterns are or were. Okay. All right, so we're just taking stock. So when you're ready, we're gonna do the other side, of course, right? So which other side you didn't do, you're gonna ground your feet. And again, I'm intentionally not giving you a lot of instructions. It's purposeful, but please be safe and please be careful. But when you're ready, you're gonna bend your other leg, hold your foot, stretch the other arm up, and then kick back and up. And time starts now, so a minute. So again, I'm going to trust you to be very mindful and careful for those of you who have some physical limitations. Notice especially the moments you're about to fall out, if you do. When you fall out, how you get back into it, just notice these things. Okay, these final few, about 15 seconds. See what you want to do in these last 15 seconds. Again, notice how you feel in your physical body, mental body, and emotional body. Okay, and release. Go ahead and ground your feet. You can again round your spine a little bit to reopen. We call it a counter stretch, right? Just open up your back. And then you can stand tall, close your eyes, and take a few breaths and see how you felt about that. And then, of course, see how you feel after that posture. Now, I intentionally chose a really, in my opinion, very challenging posture for a reason. Because it's challenging, right? So when we look at stress, we're looking at the stress factors within our life. I'd like to propose that we do that one more time, but I'm gonna guide you. And again, I know it's challenging because I can't see you and what's going on with your body, but just know that whatever it is you did, and how that looked and felt for you. That what would it be like if we potentially did it in a very steady, methodical way? Okay, so you can stand up if you're not already up. Come to a wall space, especially if you knew you had some challenges. In fact, I invite everyone to come to a wall space. So maybe you have one hand on a wall somewhere. Whatever foot you started with, we'll do that again. We're gonna bend that foot and hold it. And you're gonna use the wall for this, okay? Use the wall. And then you're gonna pick a spot to fix your eye gaze at and just look at that area and just let your mental focus be with it, okay? And then stay here for a moment because we're gonna be here for about a minute as well, okay? Now, what if you weren't rushed to do this and to do this, right? And you really took your time, kind of like that mindful eating if you participated before, you really took your time to feel that standing leg and to feel your quadriceps and to feel your glutes. If you cannot reach your foot, maybe you're reaching towards it and you're feeling that effort of holding onto the foot, right? And you're feeling your abs engage. And maybe you have your hands on the wall a lot, but maybe you're using it a little bit less, okay? And I know we are going a little over the minute, but if you feel stable, then maybe you take a finger off the wall and maybe you put it back on the wall if you need it or the counter. So there is a very purposeful energy and there's a steadiness. And then wherever you feel like is your edge, whether it's there, your hands up, or you're kicking, spend the last maybe 10 seconds just being steady with it and feel what you're doing. Okay, and then slowly release the leg. Ground your 2 feet, close the eyes, and feel the energy afterwards. Okay. And then of course we want to do the other side as well. So go ahead and go back to the counter or the wall. Again, even if you're very well versed in standing and balancing one leg, I would still recommend it just for you to experience what the difference might be. So use the wall, ground your legs, bend the other foot, and then hold on to it. And then use the wall appropriately, right? You might use it a little, you might use it a lot. But the first thing we do is we focus on that standing leg. Again, one step at a time. You feel the foot, you feel all the little muscle fibers activate. You feel the arch of your foot, which is really powerful. It's what supports the body. That's why we have arches in our foot. You feel the quadriceps supporting the knee. And in fact, if your knee's locked out, I should have said this earlier, maybe unlock your knee just a micro bit so that those muscles actually get to activate for you. Feel your pelvis lifting, your abs lifting. So you're both grounded and lifted at the same time, right? And then if you're going for a kick, feel that kick, feel the effort in that kick. And then there's this tension that we build, right? Because again, it's stressful to do something challenging. You feel this tension, but can you breathe calmly in that tension? Maintain a steady energy. With your finger maybe on the wall or the counter, you know, maybe you play with, okay, I feel quite safe and steady. Maybe I test my new limitations or my new edges by taking the hand off and playing with it. Maybe it's a little dance. It's a very conscious, mindful dance. Final maybe 10. If you want to go for a little bit more, you can, but maybe it's not that same energy of I must do this, I must kick, I must stand tall, I must balance on one leg. Final maybe kick and release. Okay, once you release, just close your eyes and just feel the difference between maybe the first set and the second set, where you're doing essentially asked to do the same thing, but done very differently, approached very differently. Okay, very good. All right, blink your eyes open. If they're closed, you can come to the floor, the mat, wherever you are. We're just gonna counter that. I'll turn to the side. You're just gonna extend your legs out and fold forward. So normally I would give a lot more instructions as to how to do this. If you're tight in the hamstrings, which I find that's usually the major muscle group, yeah, that is tight. So then maybe just kind of reach forward and breathe into the hamstring, breathe into the back. So you don't have to reach forward and hold your foot. Maybe you just reach a little bit, right? So we're approaching maybe something you might have done quite a bit with a little more softness in the approach, okay? And then slowly release from that. And then you can either come to a seated position with me, or you're welcome to lie on your back for a moment. If you'd like to lie on your back, if you feel still any stiffness in your back from that back bend, you can hug your knees and rock a little bit side to side. If you're seated, you can do a little bit of maybe rocking side to side. And I invite you to close your eyes for a moment and take a few deep breaths. Because here's some stranger who asked you to do something very weird, which was go right into a standing bow pose. Not really warmed up, I'm aware of that, right? Hopefully you guys are all okay. But what did that do to your nervous system? You were asked to do something from 0 to 100 or 60 or whatever that was challenging physically, probably mentally, emotionally. What was your thought process amongst all of that? What was that like for you? Especially the difference between the first round and the second round. So the first round, did it give you some insight as to your tendencies, right? Did you keep falling and rushing back into it, or did you take your time to go back into it? Did you say, oh, it's okay, I fell out, I'll do it again? Or was it like, oh crap, my balance is the worst, right? Or was it, I did this just the other day and I was totally fine, and what is going on? Why am I so off today? Like, what are these words you're saying to yourself? So just notice that. And then one final thing I'm going to ask of you, just be here, whether again you're seated or lying on your mat or floor, wherever. I'm going to say a word in a second, and if possible, just notice how you respond to it. Okay, what happens in your body? Okay, the word is itch. The word is itch. And if you are like most people who did feel a tickle, did you scratch it? Right? How did you feel about it? I'm going to offer you still that word, but see if you do feel that itch, which is interesting, I always find, right? It's like when someone yawns, you feel like you want to yawn. See if you can sit with it without reacting or responding to it, just letting it be. Just letting it be. And see what that sensation, what happens to that sensation. Does it stay? Does it annoy you the same way? Does it go away? 90% of the time I hear people tell me, oh, it's not so bad, or oh, it went away, or no, it's still there. That's fine too. But the idea is that we feed our energy to wherever our mind goes. So there's a yogic philosophy that says where your mind goes, where your awareness goes, is where your energy follows. So if I'm focused on that itch or that scratch, that paper scratch that's just so annoying, that thorn by my side, that's where I'm feeding my energy. If my mind is on, oh my gosh, COVID, election, I hope I didn't say very triggering words for you guys, right? My partner said something. If that's where your mind is constantly going, that's the energy you're feeding. So what I'm suggesting for you is, what if you focused a little bit more on what you do want instead of the things that are annoying and frustrating for you? So spend this next few moments, close your eyes, take a few calm, deep breaths, and call to mind the things that are going well in your life, maybe the things that you're grateful for and appreciative of. Small or big, it doesn't matter. And then maybe there are things you want to envision for yourself in the future. Maybe there's something that's going on with work or a project or a family member that you really want to see happen. There's a relationship that you want to explore, and you want to see it in its best case scenario. So I want you to imagine, what if you offered some light and energy towards what you do want in your life? And that's where you spend more of your time. See how you feel, even just thinking about it. So there's a saying that says, that's one of my favorites, you can't always pull all the weed from the garden, but you can certainly plant flowers. And I find if you're like me, my tendency is to look for problems in my life because I'm so hell-bent on solving them, right? If I can't solve problems, if I don't know what they are, so I'm always looking for problems because I want to make sure I'm in control and I'm safe. Again, that's my personal tendency. And I've seen the effects it's had on my nervous system. So it's really a big effort for me personally to come back to what do I want? What do I want to feed and what do I want to nurture? So I invite that for you. Okay. When you feel ready, you can breathe again. I suggest you practice that often. That's definitely one of those things that's helped me quite a bit and a lot of my clients. Amongst a whole slew arsenal of tools. But slowly come back, take your time, and like to revisit, the slides so that we can just recap some things. So yeah, let's go to the next slide. So again, the reminder, if you did go into a mini meditative state, right? So yeah, you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So, in a more conscious state, as you reflect back, what was it like? Was I trying to find that standing bow? Was I really struggling? Was I really like sweating? Was I super hyper focused like this cute little girl is? She's like, I must get this, right? I must balance on one leg. Were you struggling? Were you, what was the energy like, right? So what I recommend is it doesn't matter what you're doing, it's how you're doing it, right? So again, that's why I'm not giving you a slew of, okay, do X, Y, and Z, because you can go for a run. And if you're pushing yourself is different from, I'm going for a steady pace, right? I'm walking in nature as opposed to, I must get my 10,000 steps in, right? So the energy behind it is really important, again, especially if you have a sensitive system. Your breathing pattern will signal to you how much is too much, is it too fast, too intense? So you want to really pay attention to your breath pattern. Obviously, meditation, mindfulness is really helpful. And the thing I always recommend too is being conscious of what are the thoughts you're having. What are the words you say to yourself? It's a big one for us Vata people, right? If you're in that camp, or if you know people in that camp, you'll notice what they say to you or what they're saying to themselves, like that harshness. So, and again, just a reminder with the next slide, the kind of key things to, again, remind yourself of is, where your mind goes, where your awareness goes, is where your energy follows. So if you're pushing yourself hard, that the pushing energy is going to exacerbate that sense of vata and inflammation, right? Discomfort, frustration. So contemplate these things. And also, again, the other key point is how you do what you do is more important than what you do. And that's Eckhart Tolle, but so many other people have said it, right? It's not the destination, it's that journey. So consider all the goals you have in your life and what is the energy you carry behind it? How do you endeavor for it? Does it come from, oh, I get to do this, I'm excited to do this? Or is it, oh my gosh, I have to get this done, there's a deadline, right? So I wanted to end with that, but I would love to take some questions or comments. Again, I didn't get to see you guys, but if anybody wanted to share what the first round was like or the second, I'd love to hear about it. Or I have some other, also in the meantime, some resources like with books and things like that if you wanted to hear about it. So I don't know, Emily, if there's anybody who had questions, let me know.
Yeah, so that was great, May. Thank you so much. We have about 5 minutes for any question and answer. So anybody who is watching, you'll see the option for the Q&A. And please, we definitely have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. Chat in the Q&A box. And I can also, if you want to ask your question with your audio, I can unmute you and you can go ahead and speak your question into the room. We'd love to hear from you.
And in that meantime, in case there is, or I need somebody, there's a couple books I do want to recommend. One is called Mind, Body, Sport, which is, if you're an athlete, which I know there's probably some of you guys in there, it again looks at your body's constitution and how you can use it appropriately and what are the best appropriate types of activities for you. So taking the mind and the body into consideration.
All right, May, we do have a question here.
Wonderful.
This is from Krista. She is asking, how would you guide someone who's having pain during postures, not acute or dangerous pain, but generally working through chronic pain?
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious too how she felt about that standing bow or dancer's pose, because it's a challenging one. Maybe if she's up for it, you can share a little bit, and then I can speak to your question as well. And of course, you don't have to.
Okay. So, Krista, if you can answer in the question and answer box, just yes or no, and I can allow you to speak.
Put you on the spot a little bit.
Here, answered. Yes. Okay.
And it's a great question, this is kind of why I'm putting you a little bit on the spot. I hope you don't mind.
All right, Krista, go for it.
Hi, yes. I really enjoyed those poses. And of course, it was certainly more challenging the first round through in terms of kind of trying to find balance and not really feeling warmed up. I definitely could tell that the second time going slower and steadier helped me to feel more stable and secure and less unfair to balance. It was easier.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Because again, I know with everyone not seeing each other, I'm guessing, I'm hoping, and I'm just through my experience, that's typically the case. And also just FYI, you know, if you're one of those people who love to get your postures right, or if you are an athlete, or, you know, you're just like perfectionist, you know, if you want to do something well, like hurry up and slow down, right? So to answer your question too, they're both relevant, right? Like if we're, a lot of times, the discomfort you or whomever in a similar situation might feel, it might not be again from a specific injury, it's just the systemic discomfort, maybe inflammation in the body and things like that. So how could you approach that? Exactly like we did in the posture, right? Take it all the way back to its fundamental, and then ask yourself, and I do this with my clients, and I do this with myself all the time. If I'm doing something, I'll ask myself, why am I doing it? What is the purpose? So if you ask yourself, what is the purpose for standing on one leg and kicking back, right? If the purpose is to look perfect in that form, then you probably will feel quite a bit of discomfort in your body, because your body doesn't like that. It's kind of like you're forcing it to do something, and it's not even knowing why. It's like if you told a child, you know, I always say treat your body like it's a beautiful, innocent child that you care about and love. And if you kind of told that child, hey, you better do that and do it perfectly, it does this, it seizes up, and then it doesn't know what it should do. And it's not a great feeling. So if you go back and you go, why am I doing this posture? Okay, I want to work on balance. Well, if I'm focused on kicking and my focus on balance, right, is distracting you. So firstly, again, that confrontation you might have with yourself and your body could be a source of that discomfort. But if you are mindful and you do it one step at a time, your body is usually very receptive to it, and you will likely have way less pain and discomfort through that process. And then not just during, but after as well, which is the key, right? Because a lot of times people in this condition, they might not even feel necessarily a lot of pain, or maybe they do and they're pushing through it, but it's usually after where they kind of feel the brunt of it, right? Like it might stay with them for days, or for some people weeks, especially if you have fibromyalgia and lupus, and oh my gosh, it really can linger. So we want to be very mindful. And if you're creating that relationship with your body and you're present, it mitigates a lot of that. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I know it's very philosophical, and I know we also have to run, but please, if by all means, if you have any more questions, anybody, I'm happy to discuss it. But it's, again, I know it's philosophical, but it's really that approach that is sustainable for the longer term. And that's what we want to be mindful of. Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to guide you guys. And again, my contact information is up there. If you have any questions, please let me know.